Okay, you're live. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Good evening and welcome to the Finance Committee meeting for Thursday, January 14th. First action item, approval of minutes from December 17th, 2020 meeting.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the minutes from December 17th, 2020 Finance Committee meeting.
I will second.
Okay, any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries 3-0. Our second agenda item is an update of the 2019-2020 financial audit from Bloom Shapiro, now Clifton, Larson, and Allen. Nicoletta McKee will be presenting. Welcome, Nicoletta.
Thank you. Good evening, everybody. I'm going to share my screen so everybody can see what I'm talking about. And just 1 second. So everybody can see my screen?
Yes.
Yes.
Let me put on presentation mode. Okay. So I'll get started. In the agenda today, I'll go over, I have the terms of engagement, executive summary, which I'll go over the results of the audit. I included some financial highlights that are throughout the CAFR. I'll talk a bit about federal and state single audit results and work we did, the required governance communication. I'll go over quickly some GASB pronouncements and we'll introduce you to CLA. So terms of engagement, we were engaged to express an opinion on whether or not the basic financial statements are presented in accordance with GAAP. We were engaged to express in relation to opinion on the schedule of expenditures of federal awards, schedule of expenditures of state financial assistance, and to express an opinion on whether or not the town complied with the major federal award programs and major state programs. Also, based in accordance with government auditing standards, we are required to provide a report on internal controls over financial reporting and compliance with laws and regulations. In addition to that, each state and federal single audit report includes a report on internal control over compliance related to the major programs that we tested. So this is a mouthful, but this is what we were engaged to do. And on this one page, I put the summary of the audit results. Financial statements, we issued an unmodified opinion on the basic financial statements, which is the best opinion available. Included in the opinion, there is a paragraph called Change in Accounting Principle. The town adopted GASB 84 fiduciary activities statement for the year. And actually that's an early adoption because GASB 95 delayed implementation of all the GASBs. So technically next year would have been the year to be implemented, but since the management was ready and had done all the legwork prior to delaying those statements, decided to go with implementing the GASB 84 fiduciary activities. And the result of that was several funds that were included in the agency funds. Now they were included either as part of general fund, the special revenue fund, or stayed as a custodial fund in the fiduciary fund activities. Our opinion was not modified because of those changes. So anytime when there are changes that are in accordance with changes in accounting principle, our opinion is not modified. And as far as the report that's required by government auditing standards on internal controls over financial reporting, that was clean, so we did not identify any either significant deficiencies or material weaknesses over financial reporting. Same time, both federal and state single audit reports were clean. For both, we expressed an unmodified opinion on a major federal awards or the major state programs we tested. And we did not have any findings on internal control over compliance for the programs we tested. In the next few slides, I have some, I included some financial highlights. Those amounts are included throughout the CAFR, but it's easier to go when everything is, and so you can follow instead of flipping pages of a big report. So I included them here. For governmental activities, which are the activities of all the town funds, general funds, special revenue funds, capital project funds, excluding the fiduciary funds, which are pension and other post-employment benefit funds and custodial funds, are reflected in this summary. So as you can see from the summary, the fiscal year 20 ended with net position of $32.6 million versus $34.2 million in 2019. And the column 2019 says as restated, and that's because of the GASB 84 implementation. To note in this slide is the long-term debt outstanding increased by $78.6 million to about $125 million. The majority of that increase was from new bonds that were issued in the current year by about $40 million. And net pension liabilities increased by $2 million. OPEB, or other post-employment benefit liabilities, increased by about $5 million. So that was almost a $46.5 million increase year over year. All the other line items, they increased, but the long-term debt outstanding was the biggest increase for the current year. Now, as I go through the slides, you can interrupt me with any questions on slides, or if you ask questions at the end. I really don't have preference. I just want to go through the reporting and make sure that I answer your questions that you might have had while you review the reports. As far as the governmental funds, you can see that the fund total fund balance for all governmental funds at year-end was $15.2 million, of which $7.6 million is in general fund, 4.5 in capital projects, and $3 million in all other non-major governmental funds. The net change year over year, it was $1.8 million so general fund increased by $1.8 million, capital project funds $28 million, and the reason for that was the bond issuance, and non-major governmental funds in total, they decreased by $196,000. General fund, as you saw from the prior slide, ended the year at $7.6 million, of which $2.3 million was assigned, $1.4 million was assigned for subsequent year's budget, and about $900,000 for encumbrances. The unassigned portion of the total general fund was $5.3 million, and that was represented 6.8% of the total general fund budgetary expenditures. On the next slide, I included a historical view of the general fund percentage of unassigned fund balance to the expenditures and transfers out, with exception of 2017. For the last 5 years, it has been pretty much between 6 and 7%, that percentage. I didn't go back to 2017 to see why. As far as the budgetary reporting for the general fund revenues came in at $436,000 lower than budget, while the expenditures for the general fund were $1.8 million lower than the budget. Property tax collections were $85,000 under budget, and then the collection rate year over year for the current levy was 99.28% versus 99.47% in the prior year. Included in the CAFR, there's a section for internal service fund, and the position of internal service fund was $472,000, and that fund is for the Board of Education Health Insurance Fund. Another section in the CAFR is about fiduciary funds, and pension and OPEB trust funds are included there, and custodial funds, which in the past used to be called agency funds, student activities, are included in that statement too. Pension and OPEB trust funds ended the year with a total of about $71 million, of which $69 million was restricted for pension and about $2 million for OPEB. And custodial funds or student activities ended the year with $730,000, in that position.
Nicola, can you go back to slide, I think maybe slide 8, where you had the, yeah. I'm sorry, slide 9 then. I'm sorry, the next one. The collection rate, it looks like we stayed pretty close to the prior year, even with COVID. What, are you seeing that from other towns that you guys audit? Like, what's kind of the general?
We are. So it's pretty much like a slight decrease. But for the most part, the collections for June 30th stayed very similar. And the biggest contributor to that is that most taxes are already, paid to the mortgage companies, and they're being paid to the town on time. And even the ones that don't pay through the mortgage company through the escrow account, most people actually paid taxes at year end because, and we were surprised actually when we started looking at town 1, town 2, town 3, we're like, wow. But then we saw kind of the trend throughout the state that the collection stayed pretty much similar to prior year with a slight decrease. So you are where everybody else was in the town. I don't have numbers what happened after June 30th, but for the year, it was good, especially when half of the collections were already done before the year end anyway, or most of the collections. And I don't know if John wants to interject on any trends after June 30th, but.
I mean, we'll probably talk about that when we go through our monthly stuff anyway, right, John? So, thank you.
Yep. So as I mentioned in the beginning, part of the increase on the long-term liabilities were net pension liability and OPEB liability. On this slide, I put the total liability, the fiduciary net position, and net pension liability, and the percentage of funding on these plans. The police officers that receive a negative 169,000, that's actually a net pension asset and not a liability, which means that the total fiduciary net position exceeds the total pension liability there. OPEB liability was $23.5 million in total. The Board of Education portion of the OPEB is not funded, so it has a 0% funded level because there is no, the trust is not funded yet. And town is at 9.1%. 14%. The number.
I just mentioned on the pension side, the firefighters ambulance, it started to reflect some of the changes that we made in the plan about a year ago when we upgraded their payouts and so on. So I think this is probably the first year that those new numbers kicked in. So that's why you're seeing the lower percentage. Plus, the other thing is a lot depends on, for the assets in the plan, a lot depends on the month that your year ends at. We're in June, because we're heavily invested in the equities. You see the equity market down, but if you probably go out to October, November, you'd probably see the equity numbers quite higher just based on the stock market performance, and that like 89 could be closer to like 101 or something like that. So a lot of these pension schedules is a snapshot pretty much based on the how the equity markets stand at that time.
And John, do we I know we don't, I guess we wouldn't want to be like trying to time the market, but do we do any sort of reallocation when those certain things take place, or you mostly just follow whatever the market's doing?
Well, we have about 16 different categories that we invest in, and they do move it. If one's doing better than the other, they try to keep it within a certain percentage group. So you may want maybe between 10 and 20% of your assets in that class, and say that goes up to 20%, then they may sell off and reallocate to some of the lower ones. But we're not a market timer. We're probably more passive, and we do make these adjustments maybe quarterly to semi-annually.
Yeah, I was just wondering if we look to capture any profit if we think something's doing really well or reallocate. But yeah, no, that makes sense. And we're not, I'm sure no one's in there, day trading.
No.
And John, just as a clarification for anybody that may not be familiar, when we contribute to these, we actually rely upon the actuarial recommendations or computations to what the town has to contribute to each fund each year.
Right.
Correct.
Yeah, every 2 years we have an actuarial evaluation done, and that sets what they recommend for the yearly contribution. Because of the change or the freezing out of new members into the general and the police plan, we generally have seen our yearly contributions going down over the years. But just to segue into next month's finance committee, we're getting the actuarial reports back. So we'll probably present one of them, because pretty much that we invest in the same assets across all 4 plans. And you can see what I was talking about as it's a snapshot. Whenever I think it's just like 2 months, for some reason, the year end for the general and police plan are September 30th. And I think those plans are considered actuarially 100% funded. So, thank you.
So this is what I was planning to present related to the CAFR. Are there any questions related to CAFR before I go and talk about state and federal single audits?
Nicoletta, could you just go back to the slide on long-term debt where we had a significant increase? I think it was up to 124 million. I know the state limit, I was looking at the footnotes on page 11 in the financials, we're allowed to go up to 484 million, but can you just, are you able to give a quick snapshot to how we compare to other towns of similar size? Do we have a large amount of long-term liabilities out there, or are we average for other communities?
So I will address your first comment about the debt limit. So the town is well within the debt limit that allowed by the state statutes, which is 7 times the tax collections for the year. In these liabilities, this is not something that sticks out that the town has way too many bonds or other debts. So the majority of that $124 million there is in $90 million that were issued in general obligation bonds over the years. I don't have readily available like percentage of net position, what that debt is throughout the state. But you have overall, your net position overall is a positive amount, and majority of those of the debt that's issued in there is related to basically your capital projects that are going to be well in the future and be built there.
Right, and they're the 2 school projects, the senior center or the big ones, and probably $5-6 million worth of more than that, probably 13 million or so in farmland projects over the last several years. So. Yeah.
And again, I do not have any statistics readily available to present you, but that's a really good question. But the thing really that you have to worry is how close you are to that statutory limit that the state allows you to issue debt. So you are well under that amount.
Right. That part, that's good news. But remember, we have to make those payments, which affects our mill rate. So that's why I'm always looking at those numbers.
And it's, as far as your numbers, you are your unassigned fund balance for general fund is pretty much steady year over year at between 6 and 7%. And that has worked for your town because all these other funds, they have specific sources of revenues, like the capital project or the other funds, either the bonding or grants, specific grants or specific sources of revenue that come to them. So the unassigned fund balance is another number or percentage that you should be watching year over year.
Thank you.
Well, going to the federal single audit, the town expended $1.8 million of federal awards for the year, and we tested special education cluster or IDEA, which was a total of $609,000 in expenditures. As I mentioned in the beginning, we expressed an unmodified opinion on major program compliance, which means that the town, or the Board of Education rather, complied with every single compliance requirements for that grant. And we did not identify any findings on internal controls over compliance. For state single audit, the town spent $9.8 million in state awards, and only $2.2 million of that were subject to the audit. The rest are considered exempt by the state of Connecticut. Major programs that were tested for the year were local transportation capital improvement program of about $640,000, and reimbursement tax loss of state-owned property for $512,000. So we are required to test about 50% of the programs that are subject to test. Again, good news on the state single audit. We expressed an unmodified opinion on major programs compliance, which means that the town complied with all the compliance requirements for the programs we tested. And there were no findings reported on internal controls over compliance. So this year, both reports, state and federal audit compliance and internal controls, that were all clean, no findings. And as usual, we are required to communicate to you certain things that were included in a 2 or 3 page report that was distributed to you. As far as the standards adopted for the year, as I mentioned initially, GASB 84 fiduciary activities was adopted. And I have listed on this slide the significant estimates that were used in preparing the financial statements. And there were capital assets, useful life, which will determine depreciation expense, incurred but not reported, or IBNR liability, which is a liability reported on for the claims on the internal service fund for the Board of Ed, and net pension liability and net OPEB liability. Now, if the management had picked different estimates, some of those numbers could have been different. Like net pension liability, if you go 1% up or down, you can go millions of dollars up and down in liability. So it's important to understand that there are certain estimates that they are reasonable estimates, but there are still estimates that go in those financial statements. So you have to keep that in mind when you look at that $124 million liability. Some of those estimates are included in there, the net pension liability and net OPEB liability. We did not have any disagreement with management. Management did not consult with other accountants, and we did not encounter any difficulties in performing the audit. So I have to say that even though most of the audit was done remotely, we're really happy the way the audit went, the preparation that and the effort that management put into complying with all our requests. So I really want to thank the management of the town and the Board of Ed for making this an easier process that could have been if they didn't comply with all our requests for the audit. There were no uncorrected misstatements, and we did not have any independent issues to perform the audit. In the next 3 slides, I have for the next 3 years the statements that are going to be effective and implemented, but not necessarily affecting the town of Rocky Hill. So for fiscal year 21, it's fiduciary activities, majority equity interest, and omnibus, which includes various correction from prior GASBs, and none of GASB 84, as I said, was early implemented. So there's basically nothing that will affect materially financial statements for next year. Some of the items included in omnibus, which were mostly clarification of certain topics that were included in prior GASBs, none of them are going to really affect the financial statements materially, so I'm not going to even go through them. And okay, I'm missing 2 slides. I'm sorry about that. But fiscal year 2022 will be GASB 87. I talked to you guys last year for GASB 87, which is leases. That again was pushed to 1 year. The state would be really complicated if the town has a lot of leases, and when the town is either lessee or lessor, and if the town and Board of Education, if they have several leases, then the implementation of that GASB can become really, really costly, time-consuming for the town to implement it and for the auditors to audit them. So the town has a list of what leases are, like an inventory of what leases are out there, but more work needs to be done to document all the terms of these leases in order for the time when it comes to implement the statement and to report the assets and liabilities in the books related to leases, they are done correctly. So we've had conversations with Mona and John related to those topics, so they are well aware of the requirements of the statement. The other 2, there are 4 more statements applicable to fiscal year 2022. None of them actually will affect, based on what we know so far, the town. And similar to fiscal year 2023, none of them will affect the town. And last year I went in detail with those statements, so I'm not going to take your time to go over them, but as the time comes to be implemented, we always work with management and go over the requirements and guide them with any questions they might have on the implementation. The last report that we issued was the management advisory letter. I just want to emphasize the fact that those are not significant deficiencies or material weaknesses. They are just our comments to the management to take in consideration to improve the policies and procedures to make it more efficient. The first one has to do with purchase cards. The policy for purchase cards was written years ago, and the use of the purchase card kind of has evolved based on how either the economy has evolved or what the vendor are requesting of the town. So we are requesting of the management, or we are recommending of the management to update the policy to support current use of the purchase cards. All the purchases that were done, they were approved, there were no issues with them, but just they're not formalized in a new or updated policy for the purchase cards. As I said, purchase card was several years ago and should be updated to reflect the current use. The second comment had to do with Board of Ed purchasing policy. Last year, if you remember, the Board of Ed had a finding, internal control finding on the related to the purchasing policy that was not in compliance with the uniform guidance. They updated their policy, but there are still some, I'll call them immaterial items that need to be incorporated in the policy. So we recommend the Board of Ed include those items, and we've talked to the management. If there were severe items, they would have been, again, reported as significant deficiencies, but still, just in case those items will be applicable to any of the grants that Board of Ed might get in the future, they might have an issue if those, even though there are small items, if they're not implemented. So I'll say good job for them that they updated the policy, that complied with 99.9%, but they still have some immaterial items to comply with, and the management is aware of that, what they need to update in their policy. And the third comment has to do with the Board of Ed Insurance Fund. There is a liability reported in the books. It's roughly $400,000 that the Board of Ed does not report it in the general ledger. So we recommend that that should be recorded in the general ledger as opposed to saying this is what the number is, but we don't have it in our book. So it's just more of a general ledger maintenance comment than anything else. Oh, I'm sorry, I had those slides. They just went in the wrong order. I didn't know where they went. I just wanted to close my presentation with, I'm sure everybody saw the announcement, or if you did not see that, effective January 1, 2021, Blue Shapiro merged with CLA, or Clifton, Larson, and Allen. And we are going forward, be CLA, no more Blum Shapiro. We are very excited about the merger. CLA is the 8th largest accounting firm in the country. So they are a national firm, or we are a national firm. And the state and local government practice is 4th largest industry that they serve. CLA currently serves about 3,500 government clients. So as you can see, government industry, government service, it's very important to CLA. As far as our impact, the teams are still intact. Our clients will be served by the same people from the same office. The fee structure will stay the same. Our phone numbers are going to stay the same. The emails will change. Instead of saying at blumshapiro.com, that will be at claconnect.com. So it will be, our clients will be served again by the same people, but with a different name. And what's great about this merger is that being a national firm, we are now, not just us as CLA employees, but our clients are going to be able to leverage a national firm and greater resources to create opportunities for our clients and our staff. So this is a very short summary about CLA, but if you have any questions, I'll answer.
Any questions for Nicoletta? No. Nicoletta, thank you for your presentation.
Thank you for your time.
We'll continue on with the agenda. We'll move off the financial statement.
I'm trying to stop the share.
There you go.
Good. Okay, so if there are no questions for me, I can leave the meeting.
You're all set. Thank you.
I think you should stay.
You could go have dinner.
You're gonna stay till 7 o'clock.
I'll read the minutes.
Good idea.
Thank you, Nicoletta.
Thank you.
Have a good night, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye.
All right. Moving forward, our budget scheduling draft that's in our packet.
In the last meeting, I sort of throw a pro forma at you with how we handled some of the budget sessions pre-COVID. And this one here just more incorporates the current year, 2021, with some dates taken into effect, school vacation and so on, where it's just a way where we set up workshops where we hit a number of budgets in that workshop, and then the next workshops and so on. So, and it's just a roadmap to get to May 17th. And it's just how we handled it in the past when we used to have the budget sessions in the town council chamber. And we tried to adjust them so that didn't have a lot of large budgets, but we did take care of many of the small budgets at the same time. So I guess the only question, Alan, I might have is the 11th, budget capital improvement plan. And I know there's that capital improvement committee, and I didn't know whether the committee is going to be more focused to the 3-person group, or excuse me, probably 5 or 6, on looking at the capital improvement plan for the coming year, as opposed to doing it at a budget workshop.
Yeah, and I don't have a solid answer for you. I mean, we've only met once as a committee, and I guess my thought is I would leave it in, and we could always adjust because this is a draft at this point. And personally, I have no issue with the dates myself or how we're approaching it. I just do, and I guess I know we always try this. We've incorporated the function of a public hearing, but since we've gone virtual, we've kind of lost that public input. So I don't know, maybe it's just making an effort on all of our parts to do a better job communicating it so we get that input. I mean, part of being representatives of the residents of Rocky Hill is actually to hear from the residents of Rocky Hill. So I think that's an important component of all our meetings. But I don't know if Chris, Jeff, either one of you have any comments?
No, oh, go ahead, Jeff.
I was just adding, trying to have anything else to do those nights the way things are anyways. So are we planning right now that these will be virtual at this stage?
At this moment, yes. Unless people want to come back in. But I think we're getting better at Zoom, that we could align departments up for Zoom meetings and so on. Alan, the public hearing one, I think that's a charter-driven one.
Yep.
We have to have some sort of at least one public hearing. So technically, as you said, it's correct that we'd have the presenting of the budget, and then you get the comments from the public at that time, where the workshops are more, focusing in on those departments that night.
Yeah, and I guess what I was referring to, John, is just really trying to make the effort to let people know that we do want to hear from them come budget time, and not just have it as a line item and nobody show up. We do appreciate and listen to public comment, especially when it comes to budgets and mill rates and how it affects individuals. So, again, that's all we put it in here, and we just hope that we get some attendance.
Yeah, and I wonder if there's a way to either encourage the written side of it, through Dropbox, the library. I don't know, because we have had a few folks who had a hard time with the Zoom aspect. I don't know if we can have any additional folks maybe on the line to talk someone through the Zoom thing in the queue if they're trying to, if they're interested. I don't know if there's anything else we can do beyond what we have done, but I think that a couple of subcommittees we've had some interested folks trying to dial in, but they've had challenges, and I'm sure we're all familiar with folks who have different Zoom technical challenges if they're not, if they're not used to using it for work like a lot of us are. So maybe if we can try to get creative there, that might be helpful as well.
And we can continue to read comments into the record as we have for other meetings.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Jeff, you okay with the I'm sorry, did you have comments also?
No, Mike, I was just asking if we're planning to be virtual, which looks like we are. So other than that,
so John,
are we good with the groupings? I know we talked about this last time about how we're grouping each night. Is it like so there's relatively balanced? We're not overloading one night and making one night too light, or?
No, usually the first night we get through a lot of the smaller departments' budgets.
Yeah.
And then the next two, we try to split up some of the larger between 2 nights.
Mm-hmm.
And so on, but there's not as many budgets to go through. And then, of course, we usually dedicate one night for the Board of Education. And then that open May 5th is more that if for some reason um, we need an additional night, or we had to cancel due to weather. So that May 5th date may not be used at all. It's just we're trying to reserve the room for that night.
Yeah, yeah, I'm sure you're not sitting on a draft of the budget, so I'm not sure if this is a fair question to ask at the moment. But one of the things that makes it a little difficult in looking at the list is that we don't necessarily know what the projected budget is and what the areas of discussion are. If it's going to come in similar to last year or to be flat, then I think this makes a lot of sense. If we think there might be areas that will require additional discussion, maybe it's an area of capital investment or a new program we need to bring online, or who knows what the first quarter will throw at us. That's something to keep in mind as well. I guess we could use that overflow date, but maybe we would be able to get some flexibility in case there does seem to be something that needs a little more space that maybe is not an area that we traditionally would talk about.
Yes, I think next week the Board of Ed will be releasing their superintendent's budget to the Board of Ed members. So might be getting a copy maybe by next Friday delivered to your house. So you get the Board of Ed's starting point. And then other items that are coming up that we need to consider is we're going to be starting to work on Straskis Farm, and additional work would be done from to especially parcel B. We do have some money reserved in our bond appropriation, but I think we need to start looking at that as operating funds budgeted in the capital improvement to help with the farm land to get that cleaned up, as well as set up for uses that the town would like to use that property for. As I said, this year probably the focus is going to be cleaning it up from removing the material and junk on the property, as well as testing some of the soil of around the house and determination of what to do with the house and so on. And but we should probably start thinking about putting money into the budget every year associated with that farm property. And then the other one also is you may see some budgets expanding due to the community senior center increasing, I think, by 15,000 square feet and so on. So there may be some additional costs associated with that larger building and increased types of usage that could be used for activities and so forth there as well.
And isn't this the year that the state works on their biannual budget? So we don't have a firm number from what's coming down from the state?
No, not yet.
No, this is the year that
Used to
they
get,
put together.
Get something in beginning of February in the past that would list the state grants coming through from
Okay.
ECS to pilot and so on. So we should have an idea on the revenue side. Not sure whether they're going to threaten towns with making pension contributions. Hopefully that was a fad that's gone by the board.
Yeah.
And so on. So we should have some state numbers on the revenue side, hopefully at the beginning of February.
Okay.
I definitely imagine that the that Pequot number is going to go down quite a bit based on what their numbers have looked like.
I would tend to agree with that. Maybe
The key
pilot.
number for Rocky Hill is the ECS.
Mhm.
Because I think what Mona, it's about 65-70% of our state money comes through ECS,
That's right.
discounting any bonds, construction grants.
Yep, gotta watch that one.
Right, and maybe we'll be fortunate and get some of the retainage released into this year too.
Now, the only thing after we had our meeting with the state legislature, I did get a call from Matt Lesser asking for some information associated with that. And I think he did try calling whatever department, DAS, where the school construction grants are.
Okay,
And we got another letter similar to the one we got in June, but we have a new auditor in charge. And so we're sort of at the same place we were before, but we got a new person in charge of our audit, and we haven't heard anything about when they're interested in starting and so on. But we did get some correspondence, but it's sort of like we're still treading water.
I will keep our fingers crossed on that. Chris, Jeff, you guys okay if we were to include a draft copy of the schedule for the council meeting Monday night? Just to we start the discussion at the council level, more informational than anything else. But
Yeah, I think that makes sense.
could you make that happen? And if you could just note on there that the intent is to do this virtually at this point in time.
Yep. And then just one other thing associated with the budget. I had a conference call or Zoom meeting with 4 other town managers bordering the Rocky Hill. And we're starting a so-called dialogue while all the four other towns are starting their budgeting, where we're going to meet in about 30 days and look at areas where we might be able to share services. So we don't know how it is. It may be like a long-term process where you may not be able to do something quickly, but maybe over time we could incorporate something. We talked a little bit about sanitation, sharing equipment, because Weathersfield also acquired, I guess, 35 acres of farmland, and we may be looking at jointly going in on maybe more of a heavy duty, lack of a better word, lawnmower to help us start maintaining that property, because it's been kind of gone to the weeds for a while. So start making that look nice from the road, lawn mowing, and we may need certain type of tractors there. So items like that were in the beginning, and they are talking about sharing services where if we have employees that may have a special talent that we're using, that we could share with somebody else so that other town doesn't have to hire a full-time person. But again, it was just a kickoff meeting, and it went up somewhat positive. So
Definitely keep us posted as that moves forward, because I truly believe that's going to be a trend. I'd rather we control the dialogue than to get mandated that we start doing things shared in the future. So I guess I'll call that good news. We're starting the dialogue.
Do we need a motion to move this to the council, or can it just be part of the packet?
just include it as part of the package.
Okay.
I think I'll put some down discussed at Finance Committee today's date. And I'll mention the intention to be in virtual meetings.
Yeah. Just to get the dialogue started in advance, I think is important.
If you have a stamp, I could put for discussion only.
Yeah. I think you can handle that from Microsoft Word or whatever we use in town.
That stamp looks professional.
That's right. All right, FEMA related expenses.
Okay, I'll take that one. So I had in your packet an update, and I was focusing on the 2021 year because we had received all expenses from the state and from FEMA for the prior year. So we've got our 36,000 from FEMA and our 24,000 from the state for prior year. What we're looking at least I had prepared here, was what we had year to date for 2021 for the town. For ambulance has a large expense for chest compression kits. We're going to attempt to put that through. No guarantee that that's going to be a reimbursable, but we're going to try it. Also listed, we had the items from the Board of Ed. Unfortunately, since I had submitted this in the packet, I did have a conversation actually with FEMA and with the state, and they are not going to have anything education related going to FEMA at all. So the summary below on estimated reimbursements, where I had asterisked that the 3 items for education were ineligible. Unfortunately, all 4 items will now become ineligibles. And as we know, we had received from the state the $180,000 allocation. Obviously, if we were to absorb all 4 items from education, that would definitely exceed our allocation. So we'll probably be looking at some of these costs going back to the Board of Ed. But at this point, we're working on submitting to FEMA. We have opened up the floodgates, and the software is open, and we're entering invoices for the 2021 year, and we're good to go on that.
So wanted to clarify what you're saying is the Board of Education expenses are the bulk of the number of the 305.
They are at this point, yes.
And the chest compression for the ambulance, and I can see how you could tie that to COVID because, you know, they're probably not doing CPR the old way, may
Right,
also not be reimbursable. That's a questionable one.
correct.
So we're really looking at $31,000.
That's right.
Okay. And that's a like 10% of,
That's right. And the rest of it will be absorbed by the state allocation. Of course, we have, we've been seeing any of the tests that are happening, if we have any COVID employees or any employees that are exposed that are going for tests. So that number that we have, even though it's 26,000 now, it continues to grow. Any time we have any situation that's in the town, fire or police buildings, any cleanings for those will be added to that. So although that's the number now, it will continue to grow if we have any experiences that we have to work with.
okay, but those disallowed expenses, I know we got $185,000 from the state. That greatly exceeds the 185. So that means we have to make up that shortfall at this point.
If we were to absorb, yes, yes,
If nothing's reimbursed, then we're responsible.
that's
to make up
correct.
that
That's
shortfall.
correct.
Okay,
So we will try to submit everything possibly eligible.
Yep.
And I will. We'll be submitting those to FEMA. So anything that is like COVID testing, fire, ambulance, police, anything to that effect will be going straight to FEMA, hopefully to get the 75%. But it will be a small amount. You're right.
yeah, and I'm just asking the general question. I assume you and
You're
John
asking
kind
them.
of-
That's exactly the questions that we have as well.
Yeah, but the questions are, have you started to look where you're gonna make budget line item adjustments? And you don't need to give us, I don't think, the detail, but obviously there'll be adjustments to
Right.
to cover the shortfall.
We've had that discussion.
Okay,
As we hopefully this quarter start shifting to vaccine rollout, is there anything that have there been any discussions about what the town's role in that might be? It seems like mostly they're going to be through the standard medical system, but do we know if there's going to be anything in terms of our town staff getting vaccinated or anything like that, or putting on events for the public that's been discussed as falling under this?
A lot of this has to do with administrating the programs and the amount of vaccines the state gets every week. So supposedly they're getting about 44,000 vaccines a week. And then it's being spread out. Now they're expanding into 1B. So a lot of it right now is focused on the over 75 people. And basically, if you can find the numbers or websites to get on, like Hartford Healthcare and some of those, you can get on, for the individual can get on, and this is saying it's not that easy, but you can be able to get an appointment and so on. But it could be, you could call today and your appointment may be not for a couple weeks because of the amount of vaccines coming into the state. As far as from like an employee standpoint, the state developed a system called VAMS, in which you input town employees that qualify for a vaccination into that system. And if it gets through the system and you're approved employee, you get an email from VAMS telling you where places are that are administering the vaccination within 10 miles of your zip code. So we did that for our first responders. So that's how the police got theirs. Some of the fire department got theirs that way. The ambulance did something through Hartford Healthcare. But for town employees, we have this van system. And once they get blessed by the governor that that group can get the vaccination, we send a spreadsheet in that has the email addresses of all those people, like say in the highway or custodian or whatever, and that they would get into the vaccine process where they get an email, set up an appointment, and so on. The other thing is that I'm meeting with Charlie Brown and as well as Mark Zito to talk about the health district involvement in administering these vaccinations. So down the road, we could be seeing the health district doing similar to a flu clinic that they did like at Elm Ridge. We may be doing something like that in Rocky Hill, but that's sort of in the works where they may be focusing in on the teachers more at first than some of the town employees, as well as residents.
And are these is this the vaccine that you need to get the original and the booster? So the 44,000 vaccines basically would be the, people that get that twice.
I think the state's getting the one that with Modernera or something like that. They're not getting the Pfizer one, I don't think. They're getting the Modernera.
Moderna.
And I think what they're trying to do is all the vaccinations are getting in there. They're using them for the first time. They're not trying to jump over and do the second ones until they're actually needed to get it. So again, the best thing you can try to do is get on the DPH website. They have quite a bit of information on there to try to keep up with it, because a lot of times they're promising information coming out in the near future, and it's just a matter of timing it so that you can get the latest information out there. But
And then just thinking about, I understand that a lot of it is going to be a private citizen going to the website. Is there any way to assist the folks we have in senior housing with something like that? Or maybe it's already on Missy's radar or someone else.
I tend to think, well, senior housing, I'm not sure if you're talking about like Willow and Street as that, but I think if you're talking about like the convalescent homes, I think they did those all already.
Mhm.
And I think they're just starting to roll it out this week. So hopefully it will get more clarified next week. And we'd be able to provide that information. Once we know what we should do, they can always call us and we could try to help them get started.
Chris, I think they're good questions, but I think you're ahead of the state's release of information. I know we're all anxious to be able to get this behind us, for sure. All right. FEMA update on reserve for capital non-recurring expenditures.
Oh, just one last thing on the FEMA one, that the tropical storm Isa.
Oh, yes, that's
that
right.
came through, the president finally declared it a national disaster, so it qualifies for FEMA reimbursement. That was
That's correct.
out there for quite a while. Pretty much non-reoccurring is kind of slowing down. We're pretty much have completed the steps. I think we have about $5,000 of retainage for the contractor to get through the winter with. And the roof is pretty much complete. We have about $40,000 outstanding to pay the contractor between retainage and a few minor things. And we did get our first reimbursement, I think a month or two ago, for $189. Other than that, the only questionable item is down in the school improvements. One, for the electronic sign, the one that was a 50-50 split between town and the football league. And they went to planning and zoning to put it somewhere on the Chapin Avenue side of the high school. And I think it went to the P&Z, and I think P&Z denied them a special permit to do that. So I think the Board of Ed is regrouping now on what to do.
Any questions there? No? All right, state aid to municipalities, that should be I think a pretty quick one. I don't think we had any.
Yep, actually, we had one. We had our first 1/3 payment for the Pequot money.
Yeah, I missed that, the 71,000.
That's correct. Yeah, we did receive our town road aid, even though it's in the January. I'll share that next month, but we did receive our town road aid money as well.
Good,
So that's it for state aid.
okay. Keep going on the monthly financial report.
Sure, sure, why not? Okay, so we've got on our tax report, obviously, we've got good news there. We're still ahead at 67.3 in comparison to last year at this time. Our motor vehicle supplemental bills went out and collections are good there. We're actually ahead of where we were last year. So we're feeling good about the collection rates for the month of December. As you can see, we're ahead 1.9 million. Again, that's looking at a 3-year average benchmark. And for the month of December, that can tend to skew a little bit depending on where the end of December fits into the beginning of January. So although it looks good, I think we're not necessarily 1.9 million ahead. I think we're just have to keep in mind that we're looking at a 3-year average benchmark. But yes, we still are in good standing for tax collections at 67% for December. It's exactly where we should be. Okay. I can continue. On revenues overall, again, tax is in good place, other taxes as well. State is, everything's in place. Of course, we'll continue to be concerned with the interest. That will be a problem area throughout the year. You see the variance for over 260,000. That's going to be an issue. Other than that, nothing that stands out as a concern for revenue for this period. Do we have any questions on revenues?
Not seeing any, so we can take a quick look at expenses.
A quick look at expenses. Again, we should be at about 50% for the month of December. And things seem to be exactly where they need to be. I think we've got the same areas that tend to stand out. We know that the senior program is at the 25%. Again, that's the food line item is driving that down because we're not expending the food line item there. Education shows at 38.7. Actually, that would probably be for 4 months of operation to be about 40%. So that is actually a little bit low. So we'll keep an eye on that. Otherwise, there is nothing that's truly standing out.
The only one that, Mona, the only one that may be a little concerning is our contingency and reserves. We're through 87%, and you know, I know that's with retirements.
Yeah, exactly.
Driving.
Yeah, it is retirements driving that. And actually, we had one retirement that was a retirement that was pre-planned, so we'll be able to reduce that by about 60,000. That gets transferred to a prior year adjustment. This is what we do as a reserve for that situation. So that will definitely help the situation, but it is still high because we've had a number of retirements and people that have been here for several years.
Okay. Any other questions on expenses? No, okay. I guess move on to our legal bill summary.
Yep, the schedule in the packet is a schedule of bills through November. Thing we're seeing costs going up on and expenses coming in on is some of the appeal cases. So through November, we're pretty flat in all the ones from prior month. But I think there's still codes are still appealing those mannequin rulings. So we had some try to submit something to try to get the judge to finally close the case out. So there was some expenses associated with that. And all the other ones are sort of spread out amongst some of those assessment cases associated with the solar panels.
Any questions on legal? No. All right, moving forward to other. John, anything there?
Oh, I mentioned that the Board of Ed budget should be coming out next week and earlier, so I'm all set.
Okay, John, I guess an email, and I'm sure this is something you're aware of, that there's a municipal spending cap report due early February. Is that came to me from OPM?
Yeah, I think
I'm wrapping it up right now.
Awesome. Okay, I just got it, and I normally don't
if you
hear
want to
about
do
it.
it,
So I just
Alan, you
wanted
can
to
come on in.
Yeah, actually, it allows you to increase after a couple of deductions of special ed and debt and so on and so forth. And you can be within 2.5%. And I was actually just calculating it and we're within the range. But yes, it will be in before that date.
Excellent.
Okay.
All right, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
I'll second.
All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Have a good evening. We'll see everybody Monday.
Tuesday.
Tuesday,
Tuesday.
sorry, Tuesday. Correct, Tuesday. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Good
Bye.
night.